Hey everybody, I'm Curtis.
And I'm Hannah.
And this is Love at First Fright.
Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, hello, welcome.
We are excited to have you all here and to do another episode. We're getting ready for Christmas in our household, so things are feeling festive.
Yes, things are holly and jolly, if you will.
We've been trying to do some of our Christmas shopping.
Planning to see different relatives and friends and whatnot. We've only got that, I don't know, a quarter of the way figured out.
My family never figures it out until the last minute. We just kind of show up, so.
Yeah, and my family waits until the minute before that to figure it out, so.
Yep.
Yeah, we have been trying to get on top of the holiday shopping and not leaving that up to the last minute. We went out to a couple different stores for like a craft thing that you needed to get, which was unrelated to the holiday stuff.
Yeah, I was making cards.
And then also to look for we were trying to buy presents for my parents and come up with like a thing to make for them. Last year we did like a gift basket thing that we made, and it was movie themed. And
they liked that.
Yeah, they really liked that. So we decided we wanted to try to do that again. And we wanted to do a new thing. And I had to call them while I was there. And this kind of starts the whole nightmarish episode of everything. Because I think we went out and it was fine.
Yeah.
Like we got there.
It's busy because it's the holidays, but it's not that bad.
But it got worse as we got there. It just seemed like more and more people kept showing up. But anyway, so I had to call them, and I had a plan. I was going to call them each separately and be like, hey, Dad, what is Mom like for coffee? What is she like for like smells and tastes and stuff like that, so we could like put stuff together. And then I was going to call my mom and ask the same thing, because they wouldn't tell each other what I just asked them about because the gift is for that person. And so I was like, this is a great plan. It's going to work out great. So I call my mom and she doesn't answer. And I was like, all right, already off to a bad start, but I'll just call my dad. It's fine. I'll call my mom after this, or he'll hand her the phone or whatever, because they're always around each other. So then I call my dad and he does answer, but I can tell immediately that he's in the car.
Yeah.
And come to find out that they're literally sitting next to each other in the vehicle. So I'm like, all right, well, the plan's already kind of ruined because neither of you can answer with the other one sitting right there. So then I had to play like 20 questions,
it was really
yes or
funny.
no edition with my mom while I'm standing in the aisle being like, does my dad like coffee? Which, yes, he does. And then be like, does he like, because I started asking questions. I was like, does he like dark roast or light roast? And then I was like, wait, I can't ask that because then I backed up and I was like, does he like light roast? And she was like, no. Does he like dark roast? Yes. And it was like that for probably 30 minutes.
It went on for so long. And I have to say, as a person who already doesn't like to be out of my house, nothing gives me more social anxiety than holding space hostage in an aisle in a grocery store, because like it didn't matter where I went, the next person who came through needed the thing I was standing in front of. It was a social nightmare.
It was crazy. And then eventually, like, my dad doesn't talk while he's driving on the phone, and I couldn't put it on speaker. So I couldn't really ask him about my mom. So then I just ended up asking my mom directly questions, but then I just asked her a bunch of questions so she didn't know what we were getting.
The trail.
Yeah. So then I'm asking her stuff, and then she just goes off on these like tangents about, oh, I don't like hazelnut. I don't, it's fine in like Nutella because, it has the chocolate with it. It's like a hazelnut chocolate spread. And I'm like, yes, Mom, I know what Nutella is. I've actually had it and heard of it before. I don't like French vanilla. I don't like any of that. And she's just, but then when it comes to scents, she's like, but if it's like a vanilla scented thing, that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's wild. The whole thing was wild. And then I tried to do some shopping for like a Secret Santa thing that we were doing.
Yeah,
and
for our friends.
We actually went to 3 stores then, because we went to another store.
Yeah. Gift giving is beautiful, but it's also kind of stressful.
It's very stressful.
You don't want to feel like you know, you're just like, you totally missed the mark. And I think all of us have been on the other side of that. Like, I will never forget this time in my, you know, childhood where I can't even remember now what it was that I had asked for, but there was a certain CD and it had the word like India or India in the name. I don't even remember now. Asked my mom for that CD, and she gets me a Sounds of India meditation CD that was completely irrelevant, not related at all to what I had asked for.
I feel like that's what you wanted.
And it's just like, I don't want to be that person that does that to somebody else.
I can just imagine you opening it though, and then just the
I was genuinely confused, and my mom is just like, "That's what you wanted, right?" And I'm like, "Totally." I love this.
You're stronger than me, because I probably immediately would have been like, no, that's not it.
I told her later on that it was not what I wanted, but at Christmas I didn't want to ruin it.
There was one year my mom got me, I really wanted a jacket from my favorite band's My Chemical Romance, and this was around the Danger Days album that they had released, and they had this jacket and had like rainbow laser blasters on it on the back and everything like that.
Cool shit.
Yeah, it was really cool. I guess it didn't arrive in time for her to like wrap it or have it at all. Like it just didn't get delivered in time. And so Christmas morning, she had like printed out a sheet of a picture of it from online, like the listing of it online from the store. Just had that under the tree, and I was really confused until she explained. She was like, "I got this for you. It wasn't going to arrive in time, but I wanted you to know that I did get it for you." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool."
I don't think that's that bad.
No, it's not bad. I mean, shipping stuff happens.
Yeah,
she can't
that's
control
not her
that,
fault.
you know. And I didn't blame her for it. I was really confused because I was like, "You got me a picture of the jacket?" I know what it looks like.
I know how much you love this jacket. I got you this frame picture to put at your bedside
really
table.
Funny. I don't. There's no way that jacket fits me anymore. It was when I was a teenager in high school. So, and it's obviously old and everything. I don't know what happened to it. I don't know if I still have it or not. Who knows?
Well, Anyway, you can tell we're in the Christmas spirit.
Yes.
And we wanted to carry that over into the podcast.
Yeah.
So we decided for this week we would pick a Christmas horror movie. Of course, there's a lot of good options out there for Christmas.
Also a lot of bad options.
There's a lot of bad options, too. And there's a lot of so bad they're good again options.
Yes.
But we wanted to pick one that neither of us had seen but had been meaning to see.
Mm-hmm.
So we picked Krampus. If anyone is not familiar, Krampus came out in 2015. It was co-written by Todd Casey, Zach Shields, and Michael Dougherty, and then it was also directed by Michael Dougherty. And if you're not familiar with him, he's done a lot of other things, but probably the most relevant thing is that he did Trick or Treat, the Halloween anthology.
Yeah, I didn't know that until you told me that.
Yeah, it's a fun little movie. It's got a great cast. You know, the main cast members are Adam Scott, who's wonderful, Toni Collette, who I'm obsessed with, David Koechner, and Allison Tolman. And I don't know if you ever watched Fargo, but Allison Tolman.
The movie?
No, the TV show.
No, that's a show that I actually have wanted to watch for quite some time.
Yeah.
It's got, I think they just released a second third season?
Oh, way later than that. There's been multiple seasons of the show.
Okay. You can tell how much TV I watch.
Yeah. But Allison Tolman, who plays Linda in Krampus, she was like one of the stars of the first season of Fargo, and I really liked her since then. So it was really cool to see her in this too.
Yeah, she was really fun in this.
Yeah.
The main cast was kind of a standout for me. I remember when David Koechner came into the movie, because I didn't really see a cast list or anything before we started watching the movie. So I knew Adam Scott was in it because his face is just like associated with the movie. Mm-hmm. And then I knew Toni Collette was in it.
Because I don't shut up about it.
Yeah. Pretty much. But the scene where David Koechner, who plays Howard in the movie, arrives at the house, I was genuinely surprised, and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." Like I didn't expect him to be in it. He's a funny guy.
I haven't haven't seen a ton of his work, but of course, like the first time I ever saw him was back in the day when Anchorman came out.
That's
and
my most
he's just
familiar
so
thing with him, but he's in a lot of the Will Ferrell stuff. So.
Yeah. So Krampus, just a little quick and dirty plot summary for anyone who doesn't know. Obviously, it is a Christmas movie. It follows a family: mom, dad, son Max, daughter Beth, and the dad's mom, who they just call Omi. I don't think we get her actual name.
Her name might just be Omi.
I thought Omi was like a German way to say grandma or something like that.
Who knows?
I don't know. She's German.
I'm not an expert.
But anyway, it follows them. It's a couple of days before Christmas, and the mom of the family, who is Toni Collette, her sister, Linda, is coming with her family. So it's Linda's husband, Howard. They have, 4 kids? They have a son, 2 daughters.
And a new baby.
And then a baby, yes. So I guess 3 daughters. And then they also bring along their Aunt Dorothy, who is, very curmudgeonly and rude. And so right off the bat, you kind of get this sense that there's a lot of tension within the family. They're very clearly like different classes. Like Linda's family is a little bit more.
They're the family from Christmas Vacation, the cousins that show up.
Yeah,
they're the stand-in for that.
They're kind of like, they pull up in like a big Hummer. They're talking about, guns and, sports and all that kind of stuff. And then you have our original family, who are a little bit more like,
the stereotypical like elite, wealthy,
upper middle class.
I mean,
nice
part of the opening thing is Adam Scott's character taking a phone call, and it's it's over Christmas break at this point,
right.
And then Toni Collette's character Sarah is her name, and Adam Scott's character's name is Tom, kind of chastising him for it and being like, I thought you said you weren't going to be working over Christmas, and then he says, I wasn't going to be traveling. I still have to take some phone calls. So it's not, they're not, neither family is portrayed as being like this perfect.
There's tension amongst all, like each individual family and then between the families for sure. But kind of the main story of it is that the son of the family, Max, in kind of a fit of anger because he's upset at his family. It's kind of Home Alone-esque in that, he feels like neglected and left behind by his family and all this stuff. And he rips up his letter to Santa and says, I wish my family would just go away or, never come back, whatever. I hate them. And unfortunately, he gets his wish and he
unknowingly summons Krampus.
Krampus, who is, from folklore, he's kind of a,
I mean, evil Santa is like the most general way to put it.
Yeah.
The opposite of Santa. They say in the movie a couple of times with Omi in particular that Krampus, when he comes, he only takes, never gives.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's kind of like the whole thing about it. There's like a Christmas lesson to be learned in all of this. I thought the most fun thing about the movie was a lot of the references to other things that I feel like are pretty easy to spot in there. You pointed one out already with the Home Alone feeling of it, where this little kid makes a wish and then his wish comes true.
Right.
Just not necessarily in the ways that were he intended.
Sure.
And then I brought one up with the Christmas Vacation.
Yeah, a lot of that.
Family showing up and being the total opposite of what they expected. There's a good bit of stuff. I also feel like there was some influence from like Child's Play type stuff with like the puppetry of some of the things coming later in the movie, going around and like twisted evil stuff and all of that.
Because with this one, when he wakes up the next day, the way that his wish enacts is that, this big blizzard has blown in and his family is now, there's a little bit of kind of a slow burn as it builds up, but they're basically being terrorized by these, Christmassy related things. Like there's elves, there's these snowmen who are like standing outside mysteriously having appeared and they look very menacing. There's gingerbread men that are animated. There's the tree topper Christmas angel.
Yeah, a lot of the toys are possessed.
Yeah. They're kind of being tormented by all of these things and they're being picked off slowly one by one as a punishment for Max basically losing his Christmas spirit and his hope and all of that. It's definitely more of a horror comedy. And they say that it is a horror comedy. So, just kind of know that if you're going into it for the first time. I wouldn't really say that it's scary at all, at least for me.
No, I mean, we watched the whole thing and I didn't. There wasn't a moment that I really felt on edge or terrified or scary. So, if you're like not typically into horror movies,
yeah, this one might be fun.
You probably would enjoy this one, because it's not that there's not some like scary things
there's
in
violence
it,
and
or some creepy looking things or whatever. Like that's definitely in it, but you're not filled with like a sense of dread the entire movie.
It's not like
really
a bunch of jump scares and all of that.
Yeah,
it's more fun, and oftentimes, like, even in the moments that I felt were the creepiest or some of the character design was pretty spooky, but they typically like immediately cut the tension with some kind of quippy one-liner or joke. So I think it's definitely a really approachable horror movie
for sure
for someone that maybe is a bit more sensitive to some of the scares and more disturbing content.
I think on that note, I don't think it was as successful of a movie as I kind of thought it might be when I first went into it.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that I felt bored watching it.
I didn't feel bored, but
I didn't, I wasn't on the edge of my seat. I didn't really feel tension or dread. I understood the motivations for a lot of the characters and everything. Like it's clear, so it's not confusing or anything. But I think the reason I think it wasn't as successful of a movie as I guess I kind of wanted it to be was that I think they tried to split the movie into equal parts scary / comedy.
Yeah.
And maybe not even that. Maybe they intended it to be 75% comedy, 25%, horror. But I feel like they didn't do enough to like have it be successful on either front.
I think my problem with it was that for me, like a good horror comedy blends horror and comedy to where it's one seamless genre.
Yeah.
But this one, it felt a little bit more like it was giving you whiplash, where it's like one moment the tone feels really serious and really dark and it's supposed to be scary, and then literally it jump cuts to this over-the-top ridiculous funny animated gingerbread men running around on fire and stuff, and I think that was my struggle with it, because I do like horror comedies. Like Shaun of the Dead is one of my favorite movies ever. I love that movie.
Cabin in the Woods is another really good
great movie. But I think those are successful because they create more of a seamless joining of these two genres and less like this scene is horror, this scene is comedy, this scene is horror, Well,
and I mean, like it would kind of brought up Shaun of the Dead, which I think we'll probably watch that or at some point for this.
I love that movie.
I love that movie too. With Shaun of the Dead, it's a horror comedy, but it's a comedy. You don't put on Shaun of the Dead to be scared, right?
No,
it's
really.
not going to be scary. But they don't try to make it scary.
Right.
Like, it is just kind of over the top, silly, and funny, which is why it's successful. And then Cabin in the Woods leans more towards tropes to provide the comedy of it. Not that some of the things the characters do in it aren't funny, they are. Right. But like a lot of the movie is it's tropes. It's basically tropes the movie, which is why it's funny.
Right.
But it heightens the moments that are scary. Like when it's almost equal parts funny when it's Chris Hemsworth, right? Or is that? Yeah, it's Chris Hemsworth.
It's Chris Hemsworth.
When he gets on the motorcycle and he's going to jump across the gap. And we know from prior, because we see the bird fly into it earlier in the film, that there's like a force field thing. So it's equal. There's the dread and tension because you're like, oh my God, they have to stop him because he's about to jump over the chasm and slam into this thing. So it's equal parts funny as it is terrifying when he does the jump and he slams into it and his body just keeps like pinging off the wall as it falls down into the chasm. And so I think both of those movies are more successful because they heighten the horror or the comedy to the extremes in those things. Maybe Cabin in the Woods a little less of the extremes, but they use the comedy more successfully in it than this movie does, where it does feel a lot like in Krampus, it's ping-ponging from kind of scary to we have to cut the tension immediately with a funny one-liner or sound effect or whatever. There's a scene.
The sound effects were killing me.
Oh man, there's no less than 2. There's probably more, but I noticed 2 where they use just like absurd cartoon sound effects. There's a scene where Dorothy, the aunt, she's like making a stand with like a shotgun in the living room and like blowing some of the things. She like shoots the bear, this like evil bear toy that's come to life, and it like flies against the wall and then slides down, and then some other creature or whatever, and she's about to shoot one of these other things, and then a noise happens. She's standing against like a boarded up window and it like breaks open. Anyway, the long and short of it is she gets like tied up in chains, and then she's just like sitting on the floor. I think she's like, I'll see you in hell, or whatever, like and then it pulls back from it, like the shot's a wider shot of the scene because it was zoom in when she says that line, and then you hear this cartoon like woo whistle sound as she gets yanked out of the window, and it's so just jarring from what we just witnessed, and you're like, what? And then there's another scene where I think it's David Koechner's character Howard, where he gets hit on the head with something and it makes a cartoon like metal conk sound as he gets hit, and I'm like, what are we doing? Like it's so weird.
I think that the movie would have been more successful if they had just kept that silly campy tone throughout. Yes. Because there were certain moments where it felt like it was too serious, and it's hard to take it seriously when it's in this context of all this silly, goofy stuff happening. You know, like there's a scene where daughter of the family, Beth, that she goes out, she's separated from her family, and she encounters Krampus. It's supposed to be anyway, like this intense sort of cat and mouse scene of like she's hiding under a vehicle, and she can hear the footsteps, and they're sort of evading each other. But again, it's like I didn't really find any of it that scary or tense. It just felt out of place because it's within this context where everyone's just being ridiculous and cracking jokes and like over the top. So I wish that there had just been more humor throughout, or just kept it more serious and done a, truly like creepy story. But all of that said, I mean, I do think that the movie is still successful in terms of the Christmassiness of it, for lack of a better term.
No, I agree. I think there's a lot of Christmas horror movies where like it is just horror, and then there's a Christmas tree in the scene, so that's why it's a Christmas horror movie.
Any other slasher,
so it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a Christmas thing. Whereas this one very much feels like you can't make this movie unless it is Christmas. Yes, because they're so integral to each other. Yeah, they're tied together. And I do think it's successful in that. I was kind of just thinking about like a third element that I think makes it, that lends to it not being as successful. And I think it's that they're trying to balance the scary horror, the comedy of it being a comedy thing, but then also the other hallmark of Christmas movies, right, is that like feel good, Christmassy, heartfelt thing. Yeah. And trying to balance those three things that are kind of like, you can do a comedy Christmas movie and those work. Elf, that has all of those things, right? Not the horror aspects of it. And then you can do horror comedy movies. Those work really well together, generally speaking. But I think as soon as you try to put those three elements together, it just starts to become this kind of mess of like, because it's jumping from scenes of like, oh, Krampus is jumping around on the rooftops and he broke into this house and killed people or whatever. And they're discovering a scene where like somebody stabbed one of the gingerbread men onto the fridge or whatever, and we don't know what's gone on there yet. To a scene of Linda and Sarah, the sisters, kind of coming together and having a sweet, tender moment.
Yeah, reminiscing about their mom who passed away.
Yeah, and then jumping to David Koechner calling their dog Rosie that he brought to the house a useless turd, right, as like a funny moment, and then getting the crap kicked out of him by Christmas cookies. So like it's jumping from these three tonal shifts that it's just like utter whiplash the entire time. And you're like, I don't know what to feel on this thing.
I think that's a good point. The sort of the Christmas X factor, I think, makes it more complicated. Yeah. And I think it did create a little bit of a struggle narratively at times. Like one thing that I did notice towards this is a little bit later in the film, but there's a point where literally 4 adults in a row sacrifice themselves, and it's not necessarily presented as funny. Like, it's not necessarily supposed to be like, oh, they just
no,
keep
but the concept of it
themselves.
is pretty hilarious.
But it feels really ridiculous because it's like, Omi is like, I'm locking you guys out of the house and I'm gonna take on Krampus, and then the dad is like, well, now I'm making a stand. You go.
It does kind of by the time Toni Collette's character sacrifices herself, it has reached a level of absurdity.
This all happens within like
6
minutes.
Even before that, right? Mm-hmm. Like David Koechner's character Howard, he also kind of does it. It's the same scene that I was talking about with the whistle scene, and the aunt gets dragged out of the window and everything that the dark elves busted through. But I think he says like some kind of enough of this fairy tale bullshit, and he just like jumps onto the chain as it's like yanking her out of the window, and he gets yanked out too, and you're kind of like,
well, I think it was because they're the baby daughter.
Oh, yeah, you're right. The baby got taken.
She gets, like, I don't think it was intentional, but she kind of got, like, scooped up in the chaos.
And one of the elves grabs the baby.
Yeah, I think he's basically like, screw this.
So he jumps on the thing, and then, all hell's broken loose, and then they decide we have to go now. The plan is to get to a snowplow. We're all going to jump into that. Yeah, and then we're going to drive as far as we can to get help and then bring help back to find. Because I think they're still operating under the assumption that the daughter and Howie Jr., the first two of the kids to get got, are alive somewhere out there, even though they're not. Yeah. But yeah, so David Koechner jumps onto the thing, and then the rest of them decide we have to go now. They start to make their way. Omi closes the door and is like, I'm gonna face Krampus. I'm gonna buy you some time. And then she just looks at him and doesn't really do anything. Yeah. And then they're on their way and they hear a noise. And so Adam Scott's character Tom decides he's now going to sacrifice himself. Right. So he goes behind the line and tells her, I need you to keep going. I love you guys. Yeah. And he's making a stand with a shotgun. He runs out of ammo, and then he does like the heroic like final exhale, closes his eyes, and then gets yanked into the snow. Yeah. And then they're almost to the snowplow, and then Linda gets grabbed.
And she's saying, "Go protect my kids.
You go with your Aunt Sarah." And Toni Collette's scooping Max the kid, and
Toni Collette's didn't even make sense.
No, it doesn't, because they're at the snowplow, and she gets them in, and they're screaming at her, they're like, "Get in!" And she just shuts the door, and she's like, "I love you, buddy," and then she just gets yanked in, and you're like, you could have gotten in.
You had so much time to get in the car.
You could have gotten in the car. I mean, it doesn't matter, because right after that, the elves jump the car and start trying to grab at the kids, so they grab Stevie, the last of the children other than Max.
Linda's kids.
Howard and Linda's kid, and take her out of the car, and Max, is screaming, no, 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 and then, Krampus shows up and gives him a little ornament, because it's supposed to be like earlier in the movie when Omi tells the story about she had made a similar wish about her town when she was young.
She has faced off against Krampus before.
And he left her alive, and there, as a reminder, is what happens when you lose the Christmas spirit and stop believing. And so he was doing the same thing with Max, but then Max goes and confronts him and, give me my family back, but then Krampus sends them all to hell.
Yeah, I guess.
The ending of the movie is a little ambiguous. They end up in a snow globe at the end of it, the whole family, and they're just like on a shelf in Krampus's domain or something.
I was trying to figure out the ending because I interpreted it the same way that you did, of like, I guess they all went to hell and like they're just in this snow globe as part of their like eternity of suffering.
Yeah, it's like their own personal prison.
But then I was reading, I think it was the Wikipedia, because I was trying to refresh on the plot for this episode. And the Wikipedia plot summary was like, oh, he did leave them, like he brought them all back to life, and the snow globe is like a surveillance system to make sure that they like take advantage of the opportunity of like a second chance or whatever.
I don't see that doesn't make any sense to me, because when it zooms out from when he puts the snow globe on the shelf, you can see all these other snow globes with houses. So is this just he goes around and does this to everybody? Like that doesn't I don't think that makes sense so much as he's captured their souls, and now because the lighting is also different in that scene when he wakes up. And you made the joke just before this happened that you're like, it was all a dream or whatever. And I was about to be like, please don't let that be what this is, because I'm going to lose my mind. Yeah, I thought for a second
that is what it was.
But the lighting is different. It's that very soft, overly bloomed lighting to be more like the afterlife or a heaven scene or whatever. And they're all enjoying their Christmas morning and everything. But then Max opens a present, which is clearly different from all of the other presents. And it's the ornament again.
The ornament, yeah.
And they all start hearing like sound bites from earlier in the movie and everything. And they're all kind of just looking around. I don't think that that's him surveying them so much, because why would the lighting be different then? You know what I mean? I think it's more that they got sent to hell. Their souls are locked in this eternal thing, and because Max wants is for Christmas to go back to the way it was, and so it does, and it will always be that now.
I guess it's just gonna repeat endlessly. I don't really know what
it's a Groundhog's Day situation, and until somebody figures out the secret code, they're gonna be doing this over and over again.
I thought the ending was a little confusing, and I don't know. I was left with mixed feelings about it, because I loved how Christmassy it was. I do get tired. As a person who watches horror year-round, I do like to watch seasonal horror. So when it is the Christmas season, or the Thanksgiving season, or the Halloween season, or whatever, I like to be able to put something on that feels thematic. And I think that this one does scratch that itch, in that it is thoroughly Christmas from start to finish. Everything about it is Christmas. But I don't know. There was something missing for me, and I'm disappointed by that too, because I really did love the cast and I like the concept a lot.
I think if you look at this movie from the outside, you're like, oh, there's no way this is going to be a letdown. And it's not bad.
No,
I've seen worse Christmas movies.
I've seen
like Christmas horror movies and stuff.
I've seen worse every kind of movie.
It was just, I don't know. I think I went into it maybe with too high of expectations.
That's kind of what I came to, is that maybe some of this was my own, like, setting the movie up for failure, because I had heard about this a lot and I love the cast, and, you know, maybe it was kind of a situation where I went into it with an unfair
I think the thing that's like most telling about it is that, so we watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? And we watched that literally start to end. We didn't pause it. We just went through the whole way through. There was a point in this movie where you asked if it was okay if you could pause it so you could go make yourself a cup of coffee. And then I did the same thing. And I feel like that's telling. That's where the movie is. You know what I mean? Like, you don't feel like I gotta watch this one the whole way through, which is wild, because as we talked about in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre episode, that like the back half of that movie is just her scrriming. So like you could kind of just get up. You don't even have to pause it.
You can get up and
you could just get up and not really miss anything. Where in this one, it's like, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged thing. You wanted to pause it because you didn't want to miss anything, so that's good, right? But you also felt like, it's okay if I pause this one. The action's not...
I'm not that engrossed. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of tough. I don't know. I mean, I do think that there are definitely some things to celebrate. One thing I liked about it was there were certain practical effects that they did that I thought were really good. Like, there's one of the monsters that they have is this sort of horrifying life-size, like, Jack-in-the-Box jester thing that was really terrifying. Like, it had this jester face with, like, this very alien mouth that, like, opens kind of like the Demogorgon from Stranger Things. Yeah,
that's exactly what I was. I couldn't place it, but you're right. That's exactly what it's like.
But then it's this, like, long tube body that ends with the little base of the Jack-in-the-Box box.
Yeah, that he would, when we see him, there's, like, no way he should be able to fit in it.
No, so it's very, like, unnerving. And the first time we see him, it's kind of this, like, creepy shot where they're up in the attic, so it's like a, you know, flashlight spotlight kind of situation, and it flashes over them and you're kind of like disoriented and overwhelmed looking at it. You like don't even know what you're seeing, and then you realize that he is swallowing
like the feet are sticking out of his mouth. He's swallowing one of the girls.
He has fully swallowed a person. I thought that was so cool. Like, I thought it looked really good. I thought it was genuinely pretty creepy, and so I was really like excited about that. But again, I think this is also a good moment of, like, to me, that was one of the most successful horror moments. And immediately Adam Scott says, "Oh, come on."
Yeah, they cut to him in this like pretty tense moment and just on his face while he's got the flashlight and he's holding a revolver.
Yes.
And he's, "Oh, come on." And I'm like,
why would that be your reaction?
Yeah.
If you saw your niece getting eaten by that monster, your real human person reaction would not be, "Oh, come on."
Yeah. That's also the same scene where Toni Collette gets strangled by the tree topper angel thing, and Linda's being attacked by the bear, and then she sees her other daughter laying on the ground. I guess this thing hasn't consumed her.
Right, because it starts to make a break for it when
they
the
all
parents
come up
get there, so it's only eaten one child.
Yeah, but she sees her daughter, and then she's like, she kind of gains that the adrenaline rush,
yes.
You know, like I can lift a car with my baby's in.
Off my baby.
Yeah, which is not a thing, but
it is a thing.
Well, to a degree, you can't lift your adrenaline's not going to give you the ability to fully lift a whole vehicle by yourself. It's just not going to do it.
It will give you the adrenaline to drop kick a demon bear.
Yeah, well, she doesn't even drop kick it. She like suddenly stands up and just throws it, which she couldn't do before.
Have you been just...
And then she grabs an axe, which is just in the attic for some reason. There's just a wood chopping axe up there, and then she cuts the string lights that are strangling the angel things using to strangle Sarah. So she frees her, and then
Ben Wyatt.
Ben Wyatt, yeah.
Adam Scott.
He's being like stabbed by like a robot thing.
It's like a weird.
And I don't remember
toy.
I don't know how she gets that thing off of him. It's not important, but she gets that thing off of him, and then she has like a badass, well, almost badass one-liner thing as she's about to bring the axe down on the tail end of the weird jester thing because it's trying to climb through a vent.
Yeah.
And then she says like, "Give me back my daughter, you fudger."
Yeah.
Because they felt weird about making her curse at this point in the movie or something.
It's PG-13, so they have to be, they have to dole out their curse words.
Did they say fuck at any? Because I'm pretty sure PG-13
you can get one fuck.
Yeah.
I don't know where
that should be the place they put it.
Yeah.
Because saying fudger is just like, it breaks the tension. You're like, this is the moment they break back, and then she has the axe and she's about to bring it down.
Yeah.
And like, fine, she does the one-liner. You wouldn't do that. It's
No.
silly, but it's a trope thing. Fine, whatever. I don't care. So she goes to do it, but then it's undercut by her saying fudger, and then me in the audience, I'm like, I don't want you to get this. I don't want you to be successful here. And she misses, of course. And I'm kind of like, good, because if you won on that, that's so bad.
Oh god, yeah, there were too many moments like that where it was like, I just feel like they couldn't quite thread that needle.
No, I did really enjoy the part, it's right after this, where they all go back downstairs and the thing's in the vents, and I guess it's like freaking out because it's trying to get outside for some reason.
Yeah, it's trying to get away.
And Max runs over to one of the vents because the dog, Rosie, who's not been like super helpful, it helps Howard, David Koechner's character, when he's about to get killed by one of the gingerbread men that have come to life, and eats one of them in front of him, which is great. But the dog's freaking out, and Max opens the vent, and I'm like, what is he doing? And then he lets the dog go in the vent, and he's like, get him. Howard's also saying the same thing. He's like, yeah, get in there. And you hear like a scuffle for a little bit, and I honestly, like I said, I was like, well, the dog's dead.
Yeah, and the dog was fully dead.
And the dog dies. You hear it whimper at a certain point, and then the whole thing falls through the ceiling, and you're like, yeah, I don't know what they expected.
What did
that
you
thing's
think was gonna happen?
4 times the size of that dog.
And it's a bulldog. And it can't breathe.
Yeah. It's going through vents, and they're on the ground floor. This thing was in the attic.
How did it even get up there? If it's
up there, the dog can't do anything. And it's more than likely going to come at this thing with its face first, which is how it eats things. So, like, I don't know what we're thinking.
I don't know. Max basically sacrifices
Max kills a dog, I guess.
Yeah, Max is an animal murderer? Holy shit. Maybe he deserved it.
It's wild. The whole movie is a little silly.
Very silly.
I also really like the scene. I saw it coming when after Tom and Howard go out to find Beth because she went to go visit a boyfriend after the blizzard started, and she didn't have any cell service and couldn't, get in touch with him, whatever. And Tom and Sarah decide it's okay for her to go visit her boyfriend while the blizzard is actively happening, which was an insane decision.
Unhinged
Tom says it's okay, it'll be fine.
Yeah, he's like, it's only
and
a couple blocks
Sarah's
away.
kind of like, shouldn't do that. It's a bad idea. And I'm like, yeah, it's a bad idea. There's a blizzard.
Idea.
You don't know how long it's going to last or if it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
But she agrees and decides that's fine. You go out there, but you only have an hour. And then it starts to get dark. That she hasn't returned.
Hasn't
So
come back,
they Tom and Howard decide to go look for her, and stuff happens. They get attacked. We don't see by what exactly, but they end up coming back home, and they decide they need to board up the house and wait. Because they don't know what's going on, but clearly there's something out there taking people out. Yeah. They found, the window punched in on a vehicle. Their
Hummer got destroyed.
Totally destroyed.
And one of the funniest moments that actually made me laugh was David Koechner after the Hummer, discovering the Hummer. Goes,
yeah.
Lucinda!
Yeah, he's named his truck Lucinda, and he just screams
it. It's like the most tragic death of all of them. I think that one affected him more than anything.
Yeah, no, they come back, they board up the place, and they're deciding that they're going to take watch. And Tom says, I'll take first watch. And then Howard says, no, you go get some winks with your family. I got this. And then, of course, we get the cut where he's passed out against the window.
Asleep.
The fire's gone out, which, Omi keeps saying we need to keep the fire hot. So I guess they don't come down through the chimney. Nobody listens to Omi. And that's really when things kick off, is that scene, which I think is unfortunate, right? Because it's a pretty slow burn up to that moment. And then you feel like, okay, this is where it's going to kick off. But then it keeps getting undercut.
There's a lot of stopping and starting.
Yeah, where it doesn't, the action just doesn't really, they don't really take it to, just let the action go from this point, right? They, have the big attic scene, but they keep cutting that with
back down.
David Koechner in the kitchen and the gingerbread people, which is far more comical than what's going on in the attic. And it's interesting because I do think it's actually a relatively funny movie. I
think it's pretty funny.
It is pretty funny. It's just it's not scary.
No, I didn't feel that it was scary.
Yeah.
And, obviously scary is subjective. What's scary to one person, may not be scary to somebody else. So
sure. Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's funny that you bring that up because one of our friends texted me after listening to the last episode where we talked about Texas Chainsaw, and she was like, you guys were talking about how it wasn't scary. Meanwhile, I was traumatized. Yep. So truly, you just never know how people are going to react. But with this one, I think because all the tension, they don't really let you stew in any of the tension ever. They always do a little quip, a little one-liner, a little comic relief. So I think it's very approachable. I think it was still fun. Any negative thing that I have to say about it, I don't regret watching it.
No, that is a very important thing that I want to make a distinction here, is that I don't know that it was the most successful thing. I also don't feel like we wasted an hour and a half, 2 hours on this movie.
Definitely I watch
there wasn't
a lot
a
of horror
point.
movies,
Yeah,
and I have definitely walked away from them being wow, that is 90 minutes. I'll never get back.
Yeah, there wasn't a point in this where I felt like I'm feeling the runtime on this, as we should have wrapped this up maybe 15 minutes ago. It's a pretty fun movie the whole way through.
Yeah, I think if you're looking for a holiday horror movie, it's definitely worth checking out. I feel like I have yet to find my go-to Christmas horror movie that I have to watch every season. So if you have one, let me know what it is, because I want my own. I'm
almost feeling like it's not a horror movie at all, but it is a Christmas themed movie. I want to watch Violent Night again because that was a fun one.
That was a fun movie. That one's not really horror either.
No, it's an action movie. It's an action movie all the way through, but it's
super fun.
Intrinsically Christmas. It's Santa Claus coming
and
to
David Harbour.
It's great. He did a great job.
Oh, I love him.
Great movie, super fun.
Yeah.
Should watch that as well. But it's that I almost find myself after watching this, I don't know that I'm gonna put this on again every Christmas or anything, but I would absolutely watch Violent Night again, and I kind of want to. With that being said, what would you rate it?
So for me, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I keep going back and forth on it. And again, I feel like this sounds really low, but it's just because I know that I know what horror can be, and as someone who's seen so much, I've seen the highest highs and the lowest lows, I feel like it's a 2.5.
That's rough. I settled on a 3.25.
What is you keep every time you're 5 1/8, And I'm just like, come on, just pick a number.
Last time I said 4, and the time before that I said 4. It's not every time. This is the first time I've given it like a not normal necessarily thing. I don't want to rate it 3.5 because I don't know that it was that good.
Okay, 3.25.
I know what a 3 movie is, which is just like the like I'm not laughing, but I'm not scared.
Yeah. Well, see, I feel like because 3 is more than half. 2.5 is half of 5, if my math is right.
And I don't think it was quite... Yeah, no, you're right.
So you think it was
2.5 is a
better
5-star.
than average?
Yeah, 2.5 is a 5-star movie.
2.5
is 5 out of 10. Out of 10. If you're on a scale of 10. No, I know how numbers work, okay? 2.5 is equal to 5 on a 10 scale.
Yes.
So 3.2 is like a, 6 something?
Sure.
I think.
I don't know.
I think that's right.
6.4.
Something like that. Anyway, but it's funny. It's funnier than it is scary, which is why it's a 3.2 for me. Like,
that's fine.
It's, if it wasn't funny and also not scary, and I kind of felt like I just wasted an hour and a half, that's at the highest it would be as a 3. Yeah. Probably a 2.5. But I had fun with it. So.
All right. Well, if we're getting freaky with the fractions, I'll call it a 2.75. Why not? Let's get weird. Let's get freaky.
There's virtually infinite horror movies, so I feel like you can get a little granular with it.
Let's get a little freaky.
This is a 2.77.
This is a 2.7. 7.6. Let's not go crazy.
We don't want to go crazy on
we don't want to overinflate their ego. But
on IMDb it's a 6.2.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm gonna call it a 2.7.
66% on Rotten Tomatoes. But my point is 6.2, 66. I'm at a 3.25. I'm right in that neighborhood.
All right, so we have a 3.25 gingerbread men out of 5.
Yeah.
And a 2.75 goat hooves out of 5.
He's a freaky goat. Got 2.5 goat feet on there.
Yeah, he does.
That's weird. That's weird. About that time.
It's about that time that we should make like Pamela Voorhees and head off. You like that?
That's very good.
You like that one?
That's very good. Oh, man.
Thank you. If there's one gift I have, it's the puns. Feel free to give us a follow on all our socials. We're on Twitter and Instagram at First Fright Pod. And our email, which is firstfrightpod@gmail.com. Feel free to send us movie recommendations. Send me your favorite Christmas horror movies. I'm curious to hear, or what you thought about Krampus.
Yeah, I feel like this one's going to be a little bit controversial. Because I think this one is not necessarily a cult classic, but like getting in there.
Yeah,
I do think it's a really well-liked one, even though it's not highly rated.
I can see why.
I get it.
It's just, it wasn't as successful for me, but not every movie's going to be, a winner for everybody.
Yeah.
But, if you send us a recommendation, then it very well might make it on the show, like next week's episode, which is about The Ritual.
Yeah, we haven't seen that one either.
Yeah, so we're going to be watching that one.
It's on Netflix. All I know is that it has something to do with Wendigos.
Okay. That's more than I know.
That's the only thing I know.
All I know is that it's based on a book.
I didn't know that. So we both knew something about it.
One unique thing about it each.
And that's it.
So we're going to be doing The Ritual next week. So if you want to check that out, be sure to, watch it in the next 2 weeks before this episode goes live. I think that's everything for us. Thanks again for joining.
We are on like all the major places you can find podcasts, Spotify, Google,
Apple Podcasts.
So if you are listening on any of those, be sure to like it, follow it.
Leave us a review if you
leave
have
us
that
a review
option.
if you can. If not, feel free to send that in an email just to let us know. Give us feedback on what we're doing, what you do, don't like.
Shreds.
And rate it as well on any of those. Those really, really help, especially I know on Apple Podcasts and I think on Spotify as well. Anyway, scare well and see you next time.